Well, the New Democrats are not the only ones who think that the government's budget is going to be a problem for the future. Businesses and unions have concerns too. Our legislature reporter Stephen Andrew now with more reaction to what's in the budget today.
The government describes its 2012 budget as prudent. Is another word for restrained.
Very focused, very strategic.
Finance Minister Kevin Falcon will hold the line on spending to 2% over the next 3 years. He says that means ministries such as healthcare and education will have to find somewhere to save.
We have really started to bend down the growth in government expenditures. In other words, controlling government spending.
Nurses believe limiting spending is essentially a cut.
When you go from a 6% increase, which was not covering costs, to 2.9%, which barely will cover inflation and population growth, I would say that this budget is going to cause incredible pain.
There is $165 million to deal with class composition, but no money to increase teachers' salaries. Again, the government says it must remain prudent.
That's what they said a decade ago. It doesn't wash with me anymore. The public education system and the school kids of this province cannot afford this kind of prudent management anymore. This is fiscal failure, in my view.
To meet his budget targets, Falcon is telling colleges and universities to cut $70 million in administration over the next 2 years. The government is planning to turn over the warehousing of liquor to a private company. And the province is selling off non-essential real estate, from government buildings to inner harbour parking lots.
So we may be able to take some of those underperforming parking lots around the harbour and do something with those.
Among the new budget initiatives, a $1,000 annual home renovation tax credit for seniors, a bonus up to $10,000 for first-time buyers purchasing a new home, the elimination of a 2% tax on jet fuel for international flights, and a $500 tax credit for children enrolled in sports and arts.
This is great news for the whole province. More news like this would be helpful down the pipe.
But as with all budgets, what the government gives, it also takes away. In 2013, MSP premiums will go up. A family of 3 will pay $60 a year more. When the HST disappears, smokers will not get a break as the province introduces tobacco taxes. Business gets hit too. Gone is a commitment to kill the tax on small business. And should the government's financial picture get worse by 2014, big corporations will be hit with a 1% tax increase.
My goal is that we won't have to do that, but we're putting it in there as an extra measure of prudence.
Business is not convinced.
It's one that we kind of walk away from going, well, they've made some projections and they're expecting small and medium-sized business to underwrite it.
And that appears to be a common theme, especially with unions who say even with the cost of living going up every year, they are being asked to bear the pain of belt tightening.
It's a great budget for the 1%. If you live anywhere else in the province, including Vancouver Island, you're going to be absolutely poor.
But for the BC Conservatives, the Liberals' prudence doesn't go far enough, and the party believes revenue figures are suspect.
You're either going to have to cut or you're going to have to manage, the resources that you have in a better way, in a more realistic way. And that, yes, that may mean that some programs would have to be cut.
We did that in 1983. It didn't work then, and it won't work today.
So bottom line, if you look at this, if you were going to grade their budget or give them a pass or a fail, what would you give them?
This is a good budget for British Columbia. I'm a taxpayer. I think it's a good budget for the taxpayers of British Columbia.
It remains to be seen if taxpayers see it that way, especially if they receive service cuts or when they read their MSP bills.
And Stephen Andrew joins us live at the legislature with more. Stephen, interesting to hear from Bob Plecas in your report. He was known as Dr. Death back in '83 when he helped to manufacture that restraint budget under the Bill Bennett-Socreds. This is the toughest restraint we've seen in 30 years in BC.
Yeah, certainly he said that today in the budget lockup. I mean, if anyone remembers back in the 80s, I mean, they just devastated some of the employment within government and some of the programs. And he said that, near riots were occurring. And so he's saying this is a very tough budget, but he's saying it's a better budget than what they had back in the 80s.
That spawned Operation Solidarity in the 80s, those of us who remember that far back, but unlikely to see that now. I mean, what's the sense you're getting?
Doubtful. I mean, I think he's cut it very close to the line. Certainly, I mean, they've looked very closely as to which direction they're going to go. And he is obviously promising, as we've heard earlier on the show, Kevin Falcon, that the money that they hope to save from this and the money that they hope to save from keeping interest rates low, they can put back once this economic turmoil starts to stabilize and people start looking at British Columbia as a place to be.
All right. Stephen Andrew, thank you.
You're welcome.